All right, welcome to the fifth episode of the Fifth Down podcast. I am Jeremy, as always, hosting today's show. This is going to be we're going to give you this update up front, and then we're going to get into Wildcard weekend and the divisional round of the NFL playoffs with a little bit of coach talk sprinkled in here and there. Some news been coming down the pipeline on some of those. Um, Next week, we're going to have a new name for the podcast. We're going to do a little bit of a rebranding. We're going to rebrand it as the Phillips Sports Podcast, my last name, and then we'll get that changed and shared around. So if you're subscribed and seeing notifications, that is the correct one. We're going to go through a little bit of a name change, and then we're going to have Spotify coming soon here in the next week or two. We'll have that linked in the description below on the episode where we have that fully set up, the first one, and we'll let you know too. So there's some things coming down the pipeline, so keep on rolling with us. We're expanding, we're doing good things, getting the ball rolling. But enough about that. We're gonna review Wildcard Weekend, and then we're gonna go into this divisional round matchup of the NFL playoffs. Went 3-3 on my predictions, straight up on the money line. Uh, Obviously, we were dead wrong on the Houston pick. Houston blows out Cleveland, and honestly, to me, the biggest surprise of the weekend. We were, however, correct on Kansas City, correct on the Bills beating Pittsburgh. That game did get delayed, though, so that kind of did affect a little bit of the gambling on the Steelers plus 10 part I had mentioned. Also correctly predicted the Buccaneers to defeat the Eagles. Where we were wrong, we were super close on the Lions and the Rams. That was a super close game. If you took the money line, like I said, or not the money line, my apologies, the 3 points with the Rams, it would have hit though. And then the Cowboys fall absolutely flatter than the table I'm sitting in front of, like almost it feels like every Mike McCarthy team does in the playoffs. We'll hit it right here since this will be the last we talk to the Cowboys probably for a little bit. Outside of unless some surprising news, they have elected and they have officially announced they're going to stick with Mike McCarthy after that debacle in Dallas. Not what I would have done. We'll get into that here a little bit later towards the end of the show to wrap things up. We just want to touch on that. Mike McCarthy's job is safe going into next season. So, we're going to look ahead now to the divisional round. I'm going to give you my thoughts and opinions on every game. We're going to go over the gambling with each game as we go through, do each game in its whole compass here. The Texans at the Baltimore Ravens. The Ravens are favored by 9.5, coming off of their first round bye by being the number one seed. Texans coming off of a huge game against a very good team in Cleveland. As far as this game goes, this is a really hard game to get a beat on because there's so many intertwining stories here. You have the Baltimore Ravens. Yes, they've been dominant. Yes, they've had all this great momentum going forward where they've been blowing teams out left, right, and center. They've been doing really well. I've seen Mark Andrews is starting to practice, I believe. I don't know if he'll be a go for this game or not. That's their big tight end threat back. The negative part for the Ravens, though, as you think back to, I believe it was 2019, Lamar Jackson had an MVP year, got the first round bye. Tennessee comes in and just rolls them. Lamar Jackson has not had very good playoff success. Part of that, I believe, is due to his style of play. I think in the playoffs, it gets hard for him to kind of be more of a running quarterback in the playoffs. As we'll go into this kind of going into the Super Bowl, depending on who the matchups are, but a running quarterback in the last 20, 25 years has not won the Super Bowl, I should say. You look on the Texans side of things, they are just absolutely rolling. DeMeco Ryans, I believe, is the name of their head coach. He should get Coach of the Year, in my opinion. What he's been able to do this year, win the division, Basically, out of a typical 5-year plan to rebuild a franchise, when you hire a new coach, install a culture, get the right quarterback, get some right talent, become frisky, compete for a division, do something in the playoffs, in those first couple of years. He's kind of sped run all of that and just done it in the first year. He's in the divisional round. As we get into the gambling side of this real quick, then I'll touch on who I do think to win. I don't think you can lay 9.5 and take the Ravens to cover that. I think you need to pick the Texans if you just want to pick spreads. Take the Texans plus 9.5. The Ravens, I don't think will. Even if the Ravens start to blow out the Texans, that backdoor cover is coming into play there. Where they could, like I was saying, with Green Bay as the live underdog for that, I do think the Texans also apply to that, and with a little bit more, because you're getting a lot bigger number as we go into that matchup. I just think, I'm going to say it right now. Take the Texans to win straight up. That's what I'm going to do. My official prediction is the Texans beat the Ravens 27-24. Field goal, close late. Ravens lose a heartbreaker. C.J. Stroud, he's having an amazing rookie year. I think he makes the AFC Championship game. I can't trust the Ravens until they give me a reason to trust them in the playoffs. I know some people say, well, that's ancient history and all this other stuff. All I've got to go on right now is their history. They have only won one playoff game since Lamar Jackson has been the starter there. Obviously, I believe it was last year. Lamar is hurt. They still make the playoffs. Almost beat the Bengals with Tyler Huntley, but they don't. I think this is another Raven spot to just disappoint everybody and really get the question going. Lamar has these great regular seasons, and then in the postseason he doesn't deliver. So, as far as that game is concerned, I'm going to take the Texans. I'm going to take them to win. If you like spreads, obviously just take the Texans plus 9.5. And I think the Ravens are going to have some serious questions going into the offseason. Once again, getting a bye, coming out of the bye, and losing again. Not even making an AFC title game. That's the thing about Lamar Jackson. He still has not made an AFC title game yet. He has not made a conference championship game. Josh Allen has. He's been just as far as right now Baker Mayfield in that same division. And Baker Mayfield is now with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who has a live shot to make his first championship game. We'll get to that as we go. One more side note, I'm previewing these games in their order. So Texans-Ravens is your first game on Saturday. Then, we're going to go to the next game, which is the Saturday night game, and then Sunday morning, Sunday night. So, like I said, the quick recap, Texans over Ravens, 27-24. Pull the upset. Get them as a puncher's chance in the AFC title game. Next matchup, the Green Bay Packers, plus 9.5 at the 49ers. Packers coming off that huge upset against the Dallas Cowboys. Packers just have a knack for beating the Cowboys. It feels like they've beat them, I think, now 10 out of 11 times. Obviously, 49ers are going to be massive favorites here, 9.5, just like Baltimore. Unlike Baltimore, I don't think the Packers are going to win this game. I think it was really nice that they beat the Cowboys. I don't see Kyle Shanahan and the 49ers and how that offense and defense is constructed. I do not see them being able to really go up that huge lead like they did with the Cowboys. I think when you look at the defense and how they're constructed versus the Green Bay offense, who's got a lot of young players, the average age of that team is 24, 25. A lot of these guys in their second year or first year. The tight ends have been able to play real good. I don't think that Green Bay offensive line is going to hold up with Kyle Shanahan's team, especially on the defensive side. I know I'm kind of stressing the defense. I know the 49er offense will get its job done, Purdy shouldn't have to do too terribly much, so he won't be put in much of a harm's way. I just think that the Packers, they don't beat the Niners also. Kind of like last week, kind of this weird, there's always a bigger fish. The Packers beat the Cowboys, but the Niners beat the Packers. That's how I see this going, kind of too. Kyle Shanahan, I think, has Matt LaFleur's number. And I think we're looking at a 49ers team winning about 30-20, 30-21, 30-24, somewhere in there. I am going to say, though, take the Green Bay Packers plus the points. So the Green Bay Packers will lose, but at 9.5, I do believe they'll cover, even if it's off of a backdoor cover. We've gone over what that is. But the Green Bay being live, and they may have a puncher's chance just like last week, too. I kind of said the same thing last week, and then they come out and blow the barn doors off of the Cowboys. There was one play, obviously we can't pull it up, but there was one singular play where the tight end was the most open of any single play in the NFL according to Next Gen Stats the entire season. Good story for the Packers, though. It'll be a good start to the Jordan Love era, assuming he can kind of keep up this momentum. We'll see next, like I said, I think they get bounced this round. We'll see how he does next year. I think next year is the big prove-it year for Love, unless he goes on a, miracle run and win the Super Bowl this year. But I want to see how teams adjust to him next year with more tape, a whole offseason to kind of look at his tendencies, look at the receivers, look at a lot of what they do. The 49ers are going to hopefully roll to their second straight NFC Championship game, and hoping Brock Purdy can, stay healthy for that, have a healthy quarterback for really it feels like the first time in 5 or 6 years. But not a whole lot to talk about on the 49ers side that hasn't already been talked about. Christian McCaffrey, Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, George Kittle, the offensive line, it's all very good positions, and they're the favorites to come out of the NFC now after how everything has fallen, in my opinion. I do think with the momentum they're going to have off of this game, they're going to be in a commanding position come the NFC title game. But my official prediction, 49ers win, Packers cover 30-24. They probably get close, trying to get... Once again, I think the Packers might be able to keep it close, but I do think the 49ers win semi-comfortably. Moving on to the next one. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers at the Detroit Lions. Detroit put up a good fight with the Rams. They barely win 24-23. The Buccaneers are coming out of really just blowing. They blew out the Philadelphia Eagles, which I didn't expect a full-fledged blowout. I expected them to win. The manner they won was very surprising. The Lions are 6.5-point favorites. I watched that entire Lions and Rams game. I know you get 3 points for being at home, so they expect the Lions on a neutral site to be 3.5 points better than the Bucs. I don't see it. I disagree with it. I think the Rams should have won that game. I think they kind of gave it away. The Lions cornerback had kind of a cheap shot on Tyler Higbee that tore his ACL. He just led with his helmet, blew his knee straight out on a play. Obviously, that hurts in the game. As far as the side I'm going to sit on, I am going to roll it with the Bucs again. I'm going to roll it with Mayfield. I think that Lions defense can be had. I know Johnson, the Lions cornerback, might be able to take Mike Evans out of the game or Chris Godwin, but I think that second or third receiver and Cade Otton, the Tampa Bay tight end, I think he's going to do some heavy damage in the middle of the field against this Lions secondary. I want to keep in mind the Lions only got, I believe, 3 points in the second half. They got 20 points in the first half, then the Rams pretty much held them to 3 points in the second half. The Rams really just had to keep settling for field goals, and that's kind of what eventually doomed them. But I believe the Bucks and the Lions, even if you don't think the Bucks can win, you have to take the 6.5 because that's such a once again a lot of big numbers in divisional weekend, but you'll have that on some of these lower seeded teams. I know Tampa Bay was the 4 seed, but if you actually looked at the records, playoff wise, overall records, I should say, Tampa Bay I think would have slipped into 5 or 6 seed territory, maybe even 7. I'd have to double check the record against with the Packers. But yeah, I'm taking the Bucks straight up at 6.5 to outright beat the Lions. I just think the wide receiving core will be able to give them fits. I think Todd Bowles' defense, he'll be able to heat up Goff. Goff doesn't do well under pressure. I know the Lions' defense with Hutchinson and Johnson, they will be able to get pressure on Mayfield. There probably won't be much of a run game coming into this game. The Bucks just don't run the ball too terribly well. I wouldn't look at much of the rushing and receiving numbers by White last week against the Eagles. That team was 1-2-3 Cancun. They couldn't tackle at all. I watched one play where the running back White was stopped for like a 5-yard loss with a Eagle tackling him. He breaks that tackle. A second Eagle tries to come in, just blows by him and blows by another like 2 Eagles, and then gets the first down. That's not going to happen with the Lions and Dan Campbell. So I think the yardage will be a lot less than what it was. I don't think they're that explosive of a team as what showed with the Eagles, but I do believe the Bucks should be able to beat the Lions. It was a cool story, and I do wonder if there's maybe a little bit of falling flat. The Lions get the monkey off their back. They get their first playoff win in 31 years. For context, the Lions had not won a playoff game since before text messaging was a thing. You could not send a text message the last time the Lions won a playoff game. So like I said, that is kudos to Dan Campbell. I think they're doing a great job. I just think that the Bucks are going to come in there, chip on their shoulder, riding high off of the Philadelphia momentum, come in there and upset the Lions, send the Lions home. And so obviously my NFC pick for the NFC title game now would be the Tampa Bay Buccaneers going to the San Francisco 49ers. Last game of divisional weekend, highly anticipated, most talked about game in my opinion of the week. This was really being talked about during Wildcard weekend and really the last week or two of the NFL regular season was the Chiefs and the Bills, just no matter where it would be played at. Right now we're looking at the Kansas City Chiefs going to the Buffalo Bills. The Bills are 2.5-point favorites, and the Bills have home field advantage. So like I said with the Lions and the Bucks, you get in Las Vegas 3 points for being at home typically. So Vegas is saying that it's a toss-em. It's a pick-em. The Bills are favored pretty much solely because they're at home. If this was in Arrowhead, it'd be a 3.5, 3 points for the Chiefs. They think these teams are pretty much dead even. This is the big ticket game for the weekend. Obviously, you can even see the lines. And, if you go just off of what Vegas thinks, it'll be mostly blowouts this weekend, except for this game, which is marked as a close game according to the Vegas odd makers. Personally, the way I'm going to lean on this game is you will very rarely get to bet Patrick Mahomes as an underdog. I'm going to take him. I'm going to take the Chiefs straight up, 2.5, whatever. Chiefs outright win. I think the Bills They fell flat in the second half for the most part against the Steelers. They had a blocked field goal. They led Pittsburgh back into that when Pittsburgh was really halfway in the grave. They kind of let them back. Now they did, to their credit, finally rally back up and close the door. But I don't think that was as inspiring of a win as a lot of people do. I just, to almost let Mason Rudolph tie that game up late. Almost. He didn't. They never tied it back up after 0-0. But there was one point, it was a 7-point game, and if Pittsburgh got a stop, it kind of felt like that momentum was about to shift to the Steelers to tie it. But I will give credit for the Bills for winning. The Chiefs obviously beat Miami. That kind of was a ho-hum deal. We all knew the Dolphins were not going to really do anything in that kind of cold weather. Chiefs came out, won, did what they needed to do. Wasn't super flashy, but I think they kind of were in that game like they just had to not do something silly and they were going to win that game. As far as this game goes, like I said, I'm taking the Chiefs plus 2.5 also. Where this game is going to come down to is injuries. And I know everybody's pointing back to the last matchup. If I'm not mistaken, I know the Chiefs did not have Isaiah Pacheco. The Chiefs also, I do not believe, had Nick Bolton. I believe he was still out with an injury he sustained in the first Miami game. I think this game is going to actually come down to Nick Bolton stopping James Cook and potentially Josh Allen on the rush, as well as on the other side. Can Isaiah Pacheco and Travis Kelce, Can Isaiah Pacheco and Travis Kelce take advantage of the Bills' weak linebacking core? They've suffered more injuries. I was kind of keeping an eye on the injury report coming into this show. I think the middle of the field is going to be worked over very hard. I think those backup linebackers, because of the injuries, are just going to get abused by the Kansas City Chiefs. Rashee Rice had a good game. I don't think he'll have as good of a game against Buffalo unless they shift him around. I don't know if Jair Alexander, the Bills corner they traded for from Green Bay, I'm not 100% sure if he's really a following shadowy corner or not, but I don't see Rashee Rice having as massive of a game against the Dolphins as he does potentially against the Bills. Yeah, I think this really does come down to, does Nick Bolton and some of those linebackers help keep James Cook corralled as well as Allen in the pocket? Because L'Jarius Sneed and Trent McDuffie should be able to take Shakir and Stephon Diggs almost out of it. And now you're looking at the tight ends also. Dawson Knox and Dalton Kincaid for the Bills. I just think the defense is going to be the striking thing in this matchup. The fact that the Bills have really making it work against Pittsburgh was nice, but that's Mason Rudolph, and when he got into the rhythm, he was carving up that defense in the middle of the game. I don't think it's going to be much prettier with Kelce, Rashee Rice, and Isaiah Pacheco. I was trying to keep an eye, see if McKinnon would be back. I know he was designated on IR to potentially come back on the divisional round. I did not see if he was activated or not. I couldn't get that confirmed or denied if he would be available. Obviously, he's a huge part of the passing game, but they do have Clyde Edwards-Helaire as a change of speed running back, not half bad. I know the Bills do have Von Miller. They'll probably try to line him up on Jawan Taylor, probably on the outside, just to, if nothing else, draw the false start penalties. But I just can't. I don't see the Chiefs losing because so much has been made of Patrick Mahomes' first road playoff game. We've all got it probably burned into our brains at this point. I think that motivates them more than it hinders them. And I think the Chiefs are going to come out on fire and just command this game. I'm going to take the Chiefs. Final score, Chiefs 27, Buffalo 23. I think they get about a nice little 4-point win. Allen probably turns the ball over once or twice towards the end, having to get a couple of points that they've been missing. So, to go over the picks, I'm taking Dallas not Dallas, I apologize. I'm taking the Texans straight up over the Ravens. We're going to take the 49ers over the Packers. With the Packers covering, though, I'm going to take the Buccaneers straight up and then the Chiefs straight up. So, if you pick everything I've told you today, this is going to where we're getting to the parlay. Money line, Texans, Niners, Bucks, and Chiefs. All odds are provided by DraftKings. That's my preferred method, as I've said before. If you guys have a different one, you can check there. The line will probably be about the same, whether you're DraftKings or Caesar or whoever, FanDuel. You pick all those. Once again, the Texans, the 49ers, the Bucks, the Chiefs. $50 bet wins you $1,846.25. For divisional round, I'm going to give you the single play. I typically deal in $50, nice round number, $50, you know. I'm going to put $50 straight up on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. That's going to win you an even $160. So that keeps in line with the parlay too, so we're not really betting against ourselves. So that's going to cover divisional round. Moving forward into the championship games next week. Obviously, I've got the Chiefs hosting the Texans for the AFC title game. I believe that would be a very kind of cool story for the Texans. An interesting deal there. So my official conference championship predictions, I'll say right here. Obviously, the Niners host the Bucks, the Chiefs host the Texans, and then we'll see where the injuries sit after that week. And if I am in fact correct, like I said last week, I went 3-3 on the money line. I believe I went 4-2 on the, if you factor in the covering as well, because I did say the Packers would cover. Obviously, I also said the Steelers would cover, but the Bills would win. That half right, they won by 14. So we are going to shift right now to a little bit of coach talk to wrap up this episode. In my opinion, the NFC East, Dallas sticking with Mike McCarthy. We touched on that earlier. I think that's the wrong decision. I don't see why you would stay with him. His coaching record is 42-25. He's had 3 straight 12-win seasons. When you look at the regular season, it's cool and all, but they only have 1 playoff win, and that was against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in Brady's last game. He basically looked like he couldn't move in the pocket at that point. And I guess at that point, it just is Jerry Jones just wanting a yes man as a coach, somebody who will just play his little games. He doesn't want a big boy NFL coach to try to win a Super Bowl in there. Otherwise, he would have fired McCarthy. It's the same stuff that kept Aaron Rodgers from having more than 1 Super Bowl win, really. It's been his MO in the career. Like, yeah, he might win a playoff game here or there, but he gets destroyed in the playoffs. You go back to the NFC title game when he was still with the Packers against the Seahawks, when they were up 2 scores with only a few minutes left, and he couldn't figure out a way to bleed that clock out to get at least a second crack at a Super Bowl. It's his last year of his deal also. They don't owe him a bunch of money. So this is really just, I think, Jerry Jones. He just likes McCarthy as a drinking buddy or something. That's all this really feels like. Because if you wanted a legitimate coach, there were options. There were Mike Vrabel. You could have even given Pete Carroll a shot, or Bill Belichick. There were guys available. You could have even taken a big swing on Ben Johnson, the Lions OC. I can't think of his name off the top of my head. I should have had it wrote down. But the Texans offensive coordinator, taking a big swing on a coaching hire. Because if you always do what you always did, you'll always get what you always got. That's kind of what it feels like right now with Dallas. They had Romo, who was a fairly decent quarterback. I think Romo was better than Dak. And they just kept old 8-8 Jason Garrett around and around and around. And just nothing they're just okay with mediocrity and being somewhere above 500 is what really this decision screams to me. They're not. Jerry, he says all this stuff, but if he was really serious about a Super Bowl, he'd go and hire an actual head coach and not just somebody out here trying to be what feels like his friend and just somebody that puts up with the nonsense. Also, Nick Sirianni, after that horrible collapse, one of the more um, epic collapses I feel in NFL history, starting 10-1, losing your last, I think at this point, 6 or 7, when you include the Tampa Bay loss. That's crazy. And it's not like they all of a sudden lost to the Chiefs and the Bills. They beat the good teams, and then at the end they just fell apart. They split with the Giants. They lost to the Cardinals. They got blown out by the Giants the second time when they were still trying to compete for the division because Dallas was still close in that game. And then you come into the Bucks and they don't tackle there was no adjustment. Todd Bowles kept sending blitz after blitz after blitz, saying go ahead and adjust, and then he was thinking to adjust, and then they just didn't adjust, and Bowles was just sitting there like, bold move, Cotton, and he didn't adjust. So the brain drain, losing both coordinators probably did hurt. I know currently Eagles ownership is meeting with Sirianni trying to discuss what his plan is moving forward to see if they want to keep him or not. I don't think they should keep him. It looked to me like he had lost the locker room a little bit. And I think they need to fire Sirianni. I know he was just in a Super Bowl, but he didn't win it. And also, the locker room, nothing feels right. There's a difference between having maybe a Super Bowl hangover, they kind of struggle, they get bounced if it was maybe more competitive, or if anybody even wanted to tackle anybody in that game, maybe you can make the argument, okay, just a bad year, new coordinators, got to figure some stuff out. He also made some questionable in-season decisions, shuffling up defensive coordinators, putting Matt Patricia as the DC in the middle of the season, and then not firing the DC, but like demoting him. So now you've got a defense that had to learn a new DC's terms, and then in the middle of the season go to another DC. I think Sirianni's in over his head. I don't think he's a good head coach. They didn't really take off until they did relinquish play calling duties to their old offensive coordinator, and then obviously he leaves, and then nothing is really feeling right. They were saying it even when they were 10-1, that it just didn't feel right. I think the first sign of trouble was that Jets game, because something everybody has kind of forgotten about that Jets game, they did not have either starting cornerback. And Rob Saleh was able to basically beat the Eagles with his defense alone, missing two very talented cornerbacks and still picking him off, I think, 3 or 4 times. I just think Sirianni's got to go. I hate to call for somebody's job like that, but I don't see what the purpose in keeping him is. What does he do? If he motivates people, why were they not tackling? Why were they, I just don't think that'll be. If they keep him, I think that opens the door for Washington and potentially the Giants, even though I don't believe in Daniel Jones, but I know Brian Daboll's a good coach. Dallas sticking with Mike McCarthy, and if the Eagles stick with Sirianni, I think that opens up the door for the correct coaching hire for the Washington football team to potentially win that division next year. But that's kind of my coaching thoughts right now. Bill Belichick, obviously, I'll touch on that real quick. He had a second interview with the Falcons, which Bill Belichick to the Falcons is odd unless he just wants to live in Atlanta and he just knows he can coach down there for however long he wants, I guess. But we'll see where he goes. Harbaugh has been interviewing in a few places. Nothing really concrete yet. Everybody's, got to go through a lot of interviewing processes and other such things. Just going to make sure I haven't missed any breaking news real quick. Nope. Alright, so, like I said, that's going to be our show for today, and kind of ended on some of that coaching news and some other things. I just want to reiterate, next week will be under a new name. It'll be the same podcast with the same link. So it'll be the Phillips Sports Podcast. And next week we should be under that name. We should have Spotify up and going pretty soon. As always, like the video, like the stream, comment something, give us some feedback, subscribe, spread the show around, share it, enable notifications that way you'll always get notified when we go live. And we will see you next Thursday to see where I'm right, where I'm wrong, see if we've all made a little bit of money. Until then, I'll see you next time.